Hey guys, hope everyone is doing well today. So for today's video, I want to go more specifically into some data again, like I did in some of my earlier videos, in an effort to really compare two different cards. I'm actually going to compare one card from our hobby and one card from a different hobby. In my effort to do this, and I'm going to do a lot more of these because I think they're really useful, is to show you how different hobbies have done over time, so that we can have so that anyone who's looking to sort of invest in this hobby for the long term might have more of a full perspective on what they might expect from their cards doing in the long term, and sort of the ups and downs that you might see in that. And then we can compare and contrast our hobby, which is different, of course, and to other hobbies. But there are also similarities between our hobbies and other hobbies. And so it kind of opens things up that we can discuss a lot of like really important things and speculate on a lot of really important things for all those who are looking to sort of invest in the long term in this hobby. All right, so before jumping into the topic specifically, I just wanted to make a couple like channel announcements and updates and some cool ideas that Rafi and I have come up with, we think. So we just hit the 1,000 threshold, the 1,000 sub threshold. So thank you so much for all of the support out there. For those who don't know, once you hit 1,000 subs on YouTube and 4,000 watch hours, and we actually have something like about 8,000 watch hours, which is really amazing that you guys really like the material we're putting out or find the material very interesting, so you're watching it a lot. But once you get that 1,000 subs and 4,000 watch hours, you become eligible for YouTube's partner program, which allows you to sort of monetize your videos with ads. And so we're planning on you're going to start seeing, as you see on most videos on YouTube, you're going to start seeing ads in the beginning of our videos, probably sometime in the next month or so. Whenever they I started basically I did the online forums that I had to do and got that process going, but it can take, I've read, anywhere from a few days to weeks to months. So we'll see how that goes. But I will let you guys know when we're officially monetized and you will start seeing those ads. And so, Rafi and I had a conversation about what we want to do with any money that we make from this channel. And we think that, and the idea we came up with, which I think would be really fun and interesting, and I haven't seen any other channels do that, is we are going to use that money to actually buy Pokemon cards. And we're going to talk exactly about what money we get from the channel. We're going to disclose everything. And we're going to keep all of that money in a separate fund that we're going to use to buy Pokemon cards. And the goal of that is you're actually going to get to see a firsthand, totally transparent account of like what I do in the market. So when I make purchases, we're going to show them on the channel. And that will give you a really good perspective on what my thought process is, on what my thinking is. And then when I show those on the videos, we can have videos where I do that. I'm going to talk to you about why I bought that, what I think about that. Am I buying this, for a collector's perspective? Am I buying it more for the investment perspective? Do I think it's going to go up? What was my thought process? And that will be like, I think the best, will give you the best insight into sort of what I'm doing. Specifically, more than anything. So I think that we're gonna do that for the first year of this channel. This channel's about 2 months old, 2 months and a week or so old, something like that. 2 months, maybe 2 weeks old almost. And so we're gonna sort of commit to doing that for the first year to kind of see how that goes, see what kind of collection we can build, and track the sort of value of the collection and see if it goes up and down in value. All right, so that'll be really interesting, I think, and really good content for you all. After that first year, we'll sort of reassess to see how big the channel is, how much money the channel is making. We're not expecting to probably be making that much money, although, you never know. And if we're making quite a bit of money, we may change that. We may do things like we may raise money for charity. Both Rafi and I are very passionate about helping others and about charities, and we would both love to do that. That would be a thrill for us to really grow this channel into like a really big channel and actually be able to like give money to different charities that we're interested in. We could also raise awareness for certain things, and or you know, we will, you know, keep the money or some of the money for ourselves, based on, you know, how well we think we're doing, how hard we've worked, those sorts of things. And we really want to have an open, you know, conversation with you guys and take in your opinions and thoughts so that this can be a real community, and even the money aspect and the financial aspect of it can be really transparent. So you guys know what you're not paying for anything, right, by watching this, but you're giving your time to us by sitting here and watching and learning from us, and that's how we get money, or how YouTubers get money, is you sort of giving your time and your attention, which is very, very valuable, and I certainly take that seriously. Okay, so jumping into the so I hope you guys are excited about that. I guess the other thing to mention is, talked about doing like a 1,000 subscriber celebration live video, and we're definitely going to do that. It just may not be for a little bit. We may have to, it may wait a month or so. Rafi and I would really like to do that video together. And depending on like the Corona situation, and we would like to be in the same room together. We haven't seen each other in a long time. We're gonna feel that out, how things continue to move in terms of Massachusetts, because we'd like to do it in the same room. So we will give you updates on that as it comes, but we haven't forgotten about that idea. We really want to do that live video with you all, where we can engage with you guys directly and have like debates. I would love to have debates with you guys. Rafi and I are going to have debates on this channel in the future. We're going to do a lot more videos together where we take opposite positions, and you can hear our thought process and these sorts of things, because we want to give you guys, you know, everything we can. All right. So in today's video, we are going to be comparing the 2019 Hidden Fates Charizard. I'm going to be giving you lots of data on the 2019 Hidden Fates Charizard, because it's such a amazing card, such a hot card, such a high selling card, such a card that's moving in price a lot, as I talked about in my Hidden Fates video. So really, really great card to talk about. And I'm actually going to compare it to a football card. And as I said before, we're going to do more of these comparisons to football, to other types of cards and other collectibles, and just different types of you know, even antiques we may get into in this channel, and compare and contrast certain things. But for today's video, we're going to start with another card, a fellow card. So it's not a game. It's not a trading card game. It's a sport card, and it's going to be a football card. And the card we're going to compare it to is the Joe Montana 1981 rookie card. And I don't know how many of you guys you know, follow sports or are interested in sports specifically, but you know, whether you're interested in sports or not in terms of collecting sports, if you're interested in investing in collectibles, I would suggest learning more about the sports market, because the sports market has, and particularly the sports card market, because that market has been around for a lot longer, and it has a lot more data and information and patterns and price patterns that if you analyze and you look at, you can actually learn a lot more about the collectability habits of people and really what stands the test of time. You know, Pokemon, I hear people talk a lot about, you know, Pokemon prices, and that they always go up, or they always have this pattern, and so they're always going to continue to have this pattern. The reality is Pokemon is so in its infancy right now that it makes it so hard to predict, you know, where it's going to go. And when things are in its infancy, you can see huge price rises like we've seen, but you can also see total collapses of markets. And different hobbies have experienced that. And so I do think that Pokemon is going to make it to become an established collectible. And when I mean established, what I mean is that you're not going to see such crazy rises or falls in the future. You're going to see more steady, hopefully steady growth, and then followed by, you know, smaller retraces compared to the growth, and then that's going to continue over time, hopefully, and hopefully beat out inflation, so that people who invest in Pokemon actually make money over time. That's the hope for the hobby, and I think there's very real reasons to be optimistic about Pokemon in the long term. And those things I've mentioned in other videos, just in terms of the core collector popularity of Pokemon, the huge genuine interest in Pokemon that people who are my age, who are just starting to have more expendable income, have, and then kids today are still collecting, are still opening packs. And the Pokemon company is making so much money, and it's so popular, the cards, that I see that even if it dips in popularity throughout the years, as I'm sure it will, Pokemon will go up and down throughout the years, throughout the next 10 to 20 years. I think it has so much popularity and connection now that it should sustain itself, you know, for a while, even if we do see dips, which we inevitably will, as I said. Okay, so let's jump into these comparisons because it's pretty interesting. All right, so so for those who don't know that much about sports cards, rookie cards are very, very popular. People like to collect rookies of, the greatest athletes of all time. Joe Montana is considered to be one of the best quarterbacks of all time. Is generally on people's top 5 list, or at the top of some people's list, or Tom Brady, or, some combination of those. I'm from Boston, so I'm a bit of a biased Patriots fan. I know there are lots of Patriots haters out there, and trust me, I respect that. But not going into that debate right here. So the Joe Montana rookie card, it's from 1981, it's from the top set. So some things to talk about this card before we jump into the numbers. Sports cards, particularly from earlier eras, very, very difficult to grade, and very difficult to grade from packs like this. So these cards, I guess the first thing to say in terms of grading, these cards, because they're so old, and they're so much older than anything in Pokemon, right? The 1981 in this case, and obviously sports cards go way, way, way older than that, outside of that century even, even before that, right? But 1981, which is a relatively modern, it's a pretty modern sports card when you think of the history of sports cards, is still much older than any Pokemon card. But right now that's about 40 years ago, right? And so a few things to mention, right? And a few key differences to pick up on here is, at that time, people were not, they were not necessarily, and kids were not necessarily, keeping as good a care, of their cards during that era as they do now. And so, the rookie market wasn't established as it is now. The insanely high prices weren't as nearly as established as they are now. All of these grading card companies, PSA and BGS, mainly for these sports cards, have really helped grow and establish that market and establish those really high prices for really, really gem mint cards. And so people who were opening those, and mostly kids, right, who were opening those packs a lot when they first came out, weren't necessarily keeping that card in great condition over time. So a lot of them didn't survive, in really prime condition that were in people's collections. Just like even in the Wizards of the Coast, right? Like our cards when we were kids often didn't make it in really pristine condition because we like to hold them, we like to play with them. Even those who put them in sleeves and double sleeve them and put them in lots of different things, even those can shift around in those sleeves throughout the years, can shift around in those cases. There are all sorts of other issues depending on the case that you use. So lots and lots of those cards got damaged. So also lots and lots of these packs got opened, and this was an extremely popular set. And so that's very similar to Hidden Fates, and we'll talk about that. But there were lots of these packs opened, and there were lots and lots of these cards that exist. There are probably hundreds of thousands, of Joe Montana rookie cards ever made. Nobody knows the exact amount, but hundreds of thousands are very likely to have existed. Okay, and we don't know how many Hidden Fates Charizards there are going to be or are in the world, but we can certainly speculate that on that based on the numbers that have already been pulled and graded. We can try and speculate on that a little bit in this video, but very difficult to determine. But it's I think it's pretty safe to say that we're talking about. There may be more Joe Montana rookie cards. There may be quite a bit more Joe Montana rookie cards than there ever are that Hidden Fates Charizard. But there's still going to be a lot of Hidden Fates Charizards, and we're talking about probably, if right now, let's say there are already 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 graded when you look at BGS and PSA, and then you think about all the cards that you see all the time ungraded, what percentage of people actually grade their cards versus just put them in the binders? Like, probably a lot more cards are out there than are graded, I would guess. It's so hard to know. So we're talking probably already at least like very safely, and how many are in PSA and being graded right now, because so many are being opened right now. We're talking at least 10 to 20,000 Charizards probably have been pulled from packs already, maybe more. you know, very likely more. It could easily be 20 to 40,000. Again, wild speculation, right? But that, you can see where my logic is when we think about like how many are actually graded, and we think about how quickly the pop report has gone up in a short amount of time, and we think about how many, and that's just the packs that are opened. Tons and tons of Hidden Fates exists, right, in the world that is still sealed, and there are going to be Charizards in those packs that could potentially grade Gem Mint 10. But going back to that Joe Montana card, right, so that Joe Montana card, not only did the cards that were opened a long time ago not make it to today because they were beat up, whatever, even more importantly or more critically, because there are a lot of those packs that still exist because it was such a popular set. So many of those packs were printed, and you can easily buy those packs today. Which also can show you the danger of things like of Hidden Fates packs potentially, like that you know, that prices can go up and down when these things get really popular, really scarce. But if lots and lots and lots of product is made, even, you know, 40 years later, very iconic popular sets, there's still packs being sold, and we'll go into that, but for $30 to $50 a pack, okay? Which is the danger of sealed product, and this idea that sealed product can only go up, and it's so amazing, it's so important. Only if there's a very limited amount of sealed product has that been true in other collectibles. If there's tons and tons of sealed product, it has not been as true. All right. So the other thing to mention, and really important thing to mention, is with these cards, they're very, very difficult to grade even fresh out of pack. The Joe Montana card. And that is because of really two main reasons. One is, and the most important reason is the centering and print line, and not print lines, excuse me, like print dots and other sorts of printing defects that you're going to see on the card. Very, very common for cards from that era. You're gonna have a lot of issue with that. You're also gonna have issue with potential wax stains from the pack. They're wax packs, wax closed packs. You're gonna have issue from wax stains, and you may also have issue from gum that was in those packs. You know, unlikely that's gonna happen probably, and I'm not a huge sports expert, so go watch, if you're really interested in collecting these, please go watch Sports Experts. I am a Pokemon expert, and I'm using my basic knowledge of sports cards to try and compare and contrast and understand the Pokemon market better. If you're interested in starting investing in sports, I'm not your go-to man, even though I understand psychology and collectible markets really well, and those sorts of things. But usually I think that the gum or the wax problems tend to be at the end where the wax is, and tends to hurt that back card, for example, the wax, and not necessarily goes through all of it. It's very similar to the issue if people open the shadowless decks that have the stain that unfortunately goes on that beautiful Mewtwo or that Gyarados. For those who know what I'm talking about in Pokemon, it's why a lot of those shadowless cards have that issue, because they are closed for so long, and the residue of whatever they use to seal it goes on the cards. Same thing happens in sports cards. Okay, so let's go into some numbers here. So 40 years old, right, this card. So there are a total of 16,578 PSA total graded cards of the Joe Montana rookie so far, all right? And there are an additional 9,173 BGS graded cards, okay? So we're talking, right, over 25,000 cards have been graded of that Joe Montana rookie, all right? So of all of those cards, of that 16,578 PSA total graded cards, okay, there are only, in the last 40 years, there are only 108 PSA 10s have ever been graded, right, out of that 16,578. So that's a huge, huge, huge amount graded to amount of PSA 10s. We don't have anything like that in Pokemon quite yet, all right? So the going price, so let me give you a few more. So the 9s, there are 1,882 PSA 9s, and there are 7,011 PSA 8s. So when we talk about grading curves in hobbies, most cards out of packs like this, fresh out of pack like this, actually get an 8. Whereas in Pokemon, depending on the card, even in the Wizards of the Coast era where things were harder to print, there are some cards where you're actually going to expect a 10 over the 9. More often, most of the cards that get graded are going to be a 9, and that curve is going to be over the 9. Whereas sports in this era, right, And in some of the really expensive eras, like that's a lot lower. The grading was a lot lower, and that curve is usually more at the 8 to 7 mark. But it depends on the set and depends on the card, because that can definitely change. But that happens a lot and happened for this card. Whereas we look at Hidden Fates Charizard, there are only 1,489 total PSA Charizards graded so far. Okay, but of those, there's already 1,077 PSA 10s. All right, so out of 1,489, 1,077 of those hit 10, which is an insane percentage, right? We can agree on that. If you think about the difference between 100 to 16,000 and then 1,000 to 1,400 roughly. Okay, big percentage change. Now, if we look at the BGS and we look at like Black Label, which we're going to talk about in this video, which is really interesting because this actually, I think, and Black Label, I'm going to make a whole video on Black Label because Black Label really deserves to be talked about a lot more and what its place is going to be like in the hobby. And I've heard people sort of on both sides of Black Label's awesome or Black Label's terrible, and I really think it's more in the middle, and we don't really know what it's going to do for the hobby yet, and it does pose some risk to like PSA 10s, potentially in the future, so why people I don't think like it, but I think there's also potential overhyping of it. And so we're going to talk about the pros and cons of that in a different video, but we're going to talk about a little bit in this video because the Black Label really, in some ways, I think has been popularized because of this Charizard, this Hidden Fates Charizard, and because of that $10,000 price point for that initial Black Label Charizard. And I see another one on auction right now that might hit that 10,000 point. Whether it's real or, whether people are actually betting on that or not, or it's chill bid, I don't know. But that's crazy that it's hitting that price again. All right, so BGS. So Joe Montana BGS, 0 Black Labels, 0. So in 40 years, 25,000 cards graded, many of them almost certainly fresh from a pack. Many of the cards graded almost certainly fresh from a pack. 0 Black Labels ever. So, and I should change that because if you grade a PSA, you can't possibly get a Black Label. So out of 9,173 attempts at getting a Black Label, 0 Black Labels. Only 4 BGS 10s ever out of 9,173 attempts. Only 4. Only 92 9.5s and then 699s. So again, you see that similar curve. So 0 Black Labels in existence. All right, for that. Whereas if we move over to the Hidden Fates Charizard, there are out of 1,012 BGS attempts, there is already 150 Black Labels. So that's about a 15% of the time people have sent it into BGS, they've actually gotten that amazing Black Label. 424 10s, 309 9.5s, 112 9s, just to throw some data out there. And I'm going to put it on the screen so you guys can see that hopefully as well. All right. So what can we gather from this data so far? We can gather hopefully very, very clearly how much easier Hidden Fates Charizard is to grade than the Joe Montana. And so there are so many more PSA 10 and Black Label and BGS 10s than there are Joe Montana PSA 10 rookie cards, even though there are so many more of those rookie cards graded and it's 40 years old, versus and it isn't continuing to be printed and possibly reprinted, right? And it isn't and there aren't lots and lots of these packs that you can still buy for near retail, or around retail. And it depends on how, and lots of these packs, right, being probably sat on and hoarded by people, although there might be. I shouldn't say that. There probably still are a lot of those Joe Montana packs sitting out in the world as well, given their relatively low price for being that old and having such a important historic card for in the football card world. Okay, so let's go to those price of packs. So price of packs 30 to 50, as I said, for that Topps 1981. They also have rack packs in sports. For this, and those go for about $80, and I won't get too much into those, but that's another way that you can acquire this card. Just like in Pokemon, how we have lots of different ways you can acquire that Hidden Fates Charizard. They have some different ways you can acquire it too. So Hidden Fates packs are going for roughly about $6 to $10 right now for a booster pack, depending on where you get it. You can also get it for cheaper if you're buying it, you know, directly from retail in a tin or something like that. You can certainly get it for cheaper than $6 to $10 a pack. But if you want to probably get it right now on eBay, that's probably what you're looking at, $6 to $10, depending on the form that you're getting it. All right, so far, okay, Joe Montana, just by like the population numbers, we could say, okay, Joe Montana is much harder to get, is much rarer, is much scarcer, is much older, you know, isn't a modern card, so it should be much, much more valuable so far. If we were thinking that Joe Montana cards are equal, let's say instead of this, it's a Joe Montana card, let's think it's another Charizard card, right? So just looking at those, you know, that data, all right? So now I should probably give you some prices of what those cards are going for right now, right? So the PSA 10, now the Joe Montana is going for quite a bit more, and it reflects sort of that rarity. So the PSA 10 is going for about $10,000 to $13,000 right now. I've seen on the market. Okay, currently, and sports cards have also gone up a decent amount right now. You know, this card was going, just a few months ago, it was going for more in the $10,000 or the $9,500 range, like $11,000 range. So this has certainly seen a movement in price. Nothing like we've seen in Pokemon. You know, vintage Pokemon has moved up, and the next video I'm going to do is we're going to actually dig into those numbers about how much have things really moved up. You know, and you're going to see that it's like mostly 4 times to 8 times. You know, these sets have moved up, these Wizards of the Coast sets, you know, versus this, which isn't even a full-time array. This is like only a 2,000 to 3,000 up, so we're talking, you know, 20-30%, you know, increase in these prices versus what we're seeing in Pokemon, which should shock you. I mean, it's unbelievable how much Pokemon is moving. So some other interesting things to note on this PSA 10 price. So like the prices fluctuated throughout the years, and we can learn a lot from that data. So in like 2005, 2006, for example, this card was going for more in the $2,000 to $4,000 range in PSA 10. All right, so we can see that from 2006 to now, this card, you know, over 14 years, this card has more than doubled, you know, doubled to sort of tripled, and maybe even a little bit more than tripled in some cases. If you bought sort of the lowest and sold at the highest that it's going for, you could have sort of tripled, you know, maybe even quadrupled your money. There's one price that went for like $2,200, but most of the prices that have been recorded were sort of around the $3,000 to $4,000 mark for that PSA 10 at that time. Then over time, the card started going up in value, and it actually was going for a little bit more, or about the same that it's going for now, in around 2014, 2015. This card was going for about $12,000 to $14,000, similar for what it's going now, okay? So it jumped up to that price. Then it actually retraced in 2016, 2017 back to about $10,000 or so, with a few outliers here and there, but around $10,000 until about the last, you know, few months, where it's really moved back up to that 13, 14, 15, even one sold at about 16,000, you know, in the last sort of month or so. So you can see how prices kind of go up and down over time. But, you know, if you bought this card in 2006 as an investment piece, and you held it for 20 years because you believed it was a historic piece in the sports card hobby, and it was really rare and there weren't going to be a lot more graded, and the price was, you know, there wasn't going to be a lot more supply, and people over time were going to come back in the market, or, you know, really, really want this card, you've made a really good investment over time. So even if the price then dips back down again in a few months, you know, back down to 11, 12,000, let's say, you know, a small recorrection, you know, you've still made a lot of money. You've still made 3-4 times on your money. But if you bought it in 2014 at that peak, when it kind of shot up, and maybe there was a lot of hype on that card at that time, I'm not a sports card expert, but I'm just throwing out hypotheses, right? Then maybe, you know, then you haven't made any money. Then really you've actually recouped. Like, it's taken you not an additional 6 years of holding that card for it to hit that price again. And so I'd be wary of people in the Pokemon hobby falling into that exact same trap. I think that Pokemon will become established, and anything that you buy is going to be historic. But we could easily see a similar pattern happen to some of your big Wizards of the Coast hitters, where people are getting hyped up. They think they're never going to be able to get it. They think they have that intense fear of missing out, so they're willing to pay any price, and that kind of chases the price up really high. And then it's like, okay, whoa, we kind of freaked out, we kind of overpaid, people over-leveraged themselves, the market cools, popularity in Pokemon maybe wanes for a few years and changes. Maybe there's another collectible that really picks up steam, takes some popularity or attention away from Pokemon and some of the money out of Pokemon, and we see some of those retraces, and then people who bought at those high prices have to wait 4 to 6 years to get that value back. Now, the alternative of that is that we haven't seen anything yet, right? And people could theorize that really Pokemon is so speculative and unestablished that the prices we're seeing now is only the beginning, and actually the more established kind of prices are actually going to be much higher. We're going to go up, we're going to double again in price, we're going to triple again in price, and people can theorize that, and anything is possible. Okay, but I just want to talk about these other things that have happened in hobbies, so you have a sense that like nothing is invincible. Okay, and these patterns happen in all hobbies. All right, and I'm sure I can give you examples of where cards continue to go up to. I don't have one here, so that can happen as well, right? Okay, so going back to like pack rates and talking a little bit about how much it would cost you to get one of these cards and comparing these cards a little bit further. You have a 1 in 35 chance to pull a Joe Montana rookie card from a pack, and here's where Charizard, Hidden Fates Charizard, is really superior. Superior, and one of the good arguments for why this card might really stand the test of time in terms of value is how difficult it is to pull. It's about 1 in 350 packs, so it's 10 times more difficult to pull that card than the Joe Montana. All right. 10 times more difficult to pull fresh from a pack. And so if you do the math in terms of the expense, because Hidden Fates packs are cheaper, you're looking at it's going to cost you about $2,100 to $3,500, somewhere in that range, depending on how much you're paying for each pack, to pull a Charizard on average. And it's going to cost you only about $1,050 to $1,750 to pull that Joe Montana rookie card. So you are spending more money right now to pull that shiny Charizard. Okay, so very interesting. And so the thing I'll mention with that, and the reason why these packs are still such low value, I would guess, for the Joe Montana. One, there are a lot of them, right? But two, it's even if you pull that Joe Montana, you'll very, very likely only going to get a PSA 8. Which is not going for that much money. I believe it was going for a few hundred, somewhere in the few hundreds, because there are a lot of those PSA 8 cards. So for that card, you really only get the huge amount of money for the PSA 10. Now, here's what I would argue in Pokemon. And this is my fear of the black label, okay, for this specific card. And in general, and you can see it in other things. If there was a black label Joe Montana card, because it would be the only one in existence and probably would be the only one ever graded high potential, pretty decent potential, that card is a 1 of 1 in terms of the grading condition. And you're going to have lots of people with just endless amount of money who might be willing to pay you insane amounts for that. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. I think the BGS 10s were going for maybe like $40,000 to $60,000. I sold in that range, maybe even a little bit higher. So, but the only reason people are willing to pay that much is because grade qualifier is so important on that card because it's so difficult to grade. On the Hidden Fates Charizard, you don't have any difficulty to grade. The vast majority of cards fresh out of pack come out of 10. A PSA 10 is your average, right? Black Label 10s, 15% of the cards that were sent into BGS were Black Label 10s. Now, that doesn't mean that a lot of people have 9s in their collection, and so they're not grading them because they see the centering and they decide it's not worth grading. That's possible to some extent. Although the 9s are going for enough, I think that people probably should grade those anyway financially and try and sell them. But that is possible. But very, very obviously, it's so easy to grade that card comparatively to these cards that people paying for premiums on PSA 10s, on BGS 10s, or on those Black Label 10s are, in my opinion, making a mistake and are misunderstanding like value. So for me, the PSA 9 has almost the same value as the PSA 10 on this card. Because it's so easy to get a PSA 10, it's so much harder to just get this card. Like, getting this card is a lot more of the challenge than getting it in 10, if people understand. And so, I, as a collector, really don't buy into hype, right? And I try to make those decisions for myself, and I try and think about, like, is that exciting to have a 10 if, like, everyone has a 10? No, what I want is the card, because I like the art, because I like the way it looks, and I don't have that, oh, I'm one of the only people ever in the world to own this and have this excitement around that, if that makes sense. And so we'll have to see how this stuff plays out over time. But right now, that black label, right, there's one that might go for over $10,000, okay? So we're talking about that card has 150 black labels already, which is already more than the PSA 10 Joe Montana card. And that PSA 10 Joe Montana card is going for about $10,000. So the PSA 10 Montana card would then be going for the exact same as that black label Charizard, which is just pulled from a pack and is very easy to grade. That doesn't make sense to me. To me, the Joe Montana card is a much safer investment piece given the numbers. Okay, but now let's talk about Pokemon versus sports, all right? Because one could argue, well, you know, not everyone's a fan of Joe Montana. Joe Montana is going to lose popularity over time. You know, I think one of the weaknesses in sports is that people are fans of individual players, and people are very era connected. And so, and I'm not too much of an expert on sports, and sports people are going to know more about this, and there are certainly counter arguments to what I'm saying, but this is just a general overview, and this is something that does happen. There's certainly lots of people who want to collect everything and want to collect all of the historic stuff, right? And the most historic and the rarest and the rookie card of a great player that they never saw. But there's also going to be lots of people who didn't know Joe Montana, you know, particularly if you think 10, 20, 30 years down the line potentially, and are going to be, you know, more interested in the more modern great quarterbacks who are to come, right? The modern players. And so you're going to see that competition with Joe Montana. You know, each new GOAT, each new greatest of all time person that comes in the hobby, you'd think would compete, you know, with the prices of Joe Montana and potentially push those prices down. It creates more competition. Whenever you have more competition, which means more cards to buy of the same caliber that people want, you need more money in the hobby to keep those prices the same. And so if you don't have more people or more new people coming into that hobby, you have a generation change where you have a lot of the Joe Montana collectors, the people who love Joe Montana, starting to pass away or starting to get old and retiring and want to selling their collections. Are there going to be people who want that card for those really high prices? That's going to be the question. The thing that Pokemon has over sports in that way is Charizard is always going to be Charizard. And so there's a connection. There's more of a connection this is an argument I'm making, right, about Pokemon, and I haven't heard anyone make this argument, and I think it's a good one. I think it's important to understand is that the Pokemon that are going to continue to be released there are going to be new Pokemon, right, in every generation, and I think in some ways we may see those be rookie cards of those Pokemon, and we haven't heard people talk about rookie cards in Pokemon yet. These are all possible collecting classes that may happen. People may start collecting PSA 10s of the rookie card, of that first card, particularly, or the first chase card of that Pokemon, that first really hard, you know, card to get. All possibilities that happen in sports, right? Rookie collecting became very popular because anything that can differentiate value, create a chase, is what collectors go after. And so us all agreeing that certain cards have a special connection to us in a hobby because they're the first time that Pokemon ever appeared, will create that collector hype, will create that organic, I think, interest and enjoyment. And I certainly have that. And I actually try to go after those cards in some cases not because I'm actually investing in them. I just like personally owning the first card ever of that Pokemon. It's just a natural collector interest of mine, okay? And I think other people might have that, and so you may see the investment. You may see the prices go up on those over time. Just a thing to mention. But yeah, so Pokemon, this connection in Pokemon, right? This connection that every Charizard that's a hit, you know, connects to the next Charizard, connects to the next Charizard, connects to the next Charizard. And so you are going to have Charizard competition. And that's part of why rookie Charizards are going to be so important and why I think that base Charizard is going to be so important, sort of like a rookie Montana. Like other Montana cards can compete with that first Montana. But you're not having new Montana cards being made now. You're having new Charizard cards. And this Charizard card, you know, it's everyone loves Charizard pretty much in the hobby. Not everyone, but a lot of people love Charizard, and I think that will always be the case as long as Pokemon is alive. And so it has that benefit to this Montana card is that that everyone loves it. Everyone views it as the mascot of the card collecting world right now in terms of value, and that will likely continue on in the future. Okay, so those are the positive points for the Hidden Fates Charizard as being really valuable. That it's very difficult to pull, much more difficult than a card like a Montana. And it's and the Charizard itself is so popular and so iconic and will always be in the future that over time it's going to be more consistent and more stable in people's love and enjoyment of that card. So those are the two positives. Now, as I said before, the huge negatives, just to summarize, so easy to grade, products still on the shelves, possible reprints, other stuff I talked in my Hidden Fates video. So I think that's a really good summary of these two cards, of comparing these two cards, of comparing these ideas, and of giving you those time periods and talking about why things change over time. And will hopefully really help you guys start making thoughtful, informed decisions on your purchases, and maybe pause and question some of your spending habits right now, or feel more confident in your spending habits. Because, for example, you're buying this BGS Black Label 10 because, yes, you understand what I'm arguing in terms of it's very easy to grade versus a card like this, and is still going for about the same value right now as like a PSA 10 Montana, card, which is much harder to get, much harder to grade. But you think that because it's so much harder to pull, and you think that because of maybe Hidden Fates being such a historic, important set, and it's always going to be an important set, and that Charizard is always going to be so popular, that that's going to like really hold and maintain the value in a different way than the Montana card has been able to maintain its value over time, as we've seen ups and downs in that Montana card. Cool. All right, thank you so much for making it through this video and listening the whole way. For those who did, really appreciate it. And I will make another video for you all very shortly. All right, take care.